much unchecked power does it take for a federal agency to start targeting its own citizens? Because apparently ICE is running that experiment right now. Representative Jayar just had to introduce a bill to make sure ICE doesn't deport American citizens. Just in case anyone at ICE forgot that U.S. citizens are, in fact, allowed to stay in this country. And guess who voted for it? Yes, Republicans. Because nothing says constitutional conservative like ignoring the Constitution.
This is an amendment about making sure that we follow ICE's own policy that it cannot detain U.S. citizens. And Mr. Liu is correct that it's batshit crazy that I got to introduce this amendment. But it is also the reality that I have to introduce this amendment because it is happening. The examples that I gave, multiple examples, and I could give you more, are happening. This is happening. ICE is detaining and deporting U.S. citizens.
It's petty authoritarianism that included Newark's mayor getting arrested during an ICE oversight visit. Apparently, when ICE doesn't like the questions, they just slap some handcuffs on you. So what was the crime exactly? Asking too many questions or not groveling and conforming to their demands?
And tensions, as you mentioned, Anna, are also boiling over in Newark, New Jersey, at an immigration detention center where the city's mayor, Ras Baraka, was arrested, accused of trespassing after federal agents say he ignored warnings to leave. His arrest set off a scrum outside the complex in the parking lot that included the members of Congress and federal agents. Mayor Baraka was with 3 Democratic members of Congress who say that they were there for an oversight visit to check on conditions, to talk to detainees. Baraka, who's now facing trespassing charges, called the whole thing authoritarianism and says that he was invited onto the property.
But it gets better. DHS claims that Representative McIver body slammed an agent. So a sitting member of Congress left WrestleMania and went straight to all these protests to get some jobs done. I'm still looking, though, for some footage of this assault, which shouldn't disturb them at all, really, anyway, considering the way that these foot soldiers manhandled that 16-year-old girl in Massachusetts while holding a baby. So it's just their word that everyone already knows is as flimsy as Donald Trump's attachment to the truth.
DHS is pointing to this video that they say shows at least one representative, LaMonica McIver, in the red, shoving her way past a DHS agent. They say she body slammed the officer, an accusation McIver rejects.
There's no video that supports me body slamming anyone. We were simply there to do our job, therefore oversight visit.
DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin responded this morning.
Body slamming, body ramming, striking an officer, pushing, shoving, whatever you want to call it, it sure looks like assault. People should watch that and decide for themselves. There's no place for that, especially members of Congress. It is so beneath them to be treating law enforcement like this.
She wasn't even done because she doubles down, accusing members of Congress of fame chasing. Somehow, when you're an ICE agent, the real victims aren't the people, including some American citizens, that you're arresting and deporting with no due process. It's you, somehow.
Yeah, Lawrence, these members of Congress and protesters, a mob of protesters, stormed this gate to try and enter the detention facility. The detention facility holds members of MS-13, child rapists, murderers, arsonists, drug traffickers, American killers, and for them to try and get these individuals out is just beyond the pale. We know that the mayor, we know these members of Congress want their 15 minutes of fame so desperately, but they're willing to do it at the peril of the safety of our brave law enforcement and even the detainees as well, Lawrence.
They get this energy from Tom Homan, the guy who thinks due process is just a waste of time. And when asked by a select MAGA member of their new, more favorable media group why ICE doesn't just arrest Democrats who harbor undocumented immigrants, he said, wait till you see what's coming. So I'm still wondering that the people that thought this administration's promise to usher in this fascism think that it's still a joke just to troll the libs.
So the president signed an executive order just this week threatening to defund sanctuary cities for their policies. Why not just arrest the leaders who are harboring and shielding illegal aliens, actually terrorists, from deportation?
Wait to see what's coming.
That's not even the low point, because Homan then brings up his mobster-like agreement with New York City Mayor Eric Adams when they pulled some strings to get his ass out of legal hot water. But City Council member Justin Brennan asked, what agreement, outside of the Constitution?
We're not going to end. We're not going to rest until every criminal illegal alien's out of the state of New York, specifically New York City. Kristi Noem's been up here several times. She's coming back. We're going to do our job despite the city council who wants to continue putting roadblocks up in the agreement that me and Mayor Adams had.
The objective is to project this sense of lawlessness and aggression so that they don't have to deal with real pushback from Americans that still believe in the Constitution, and the rule of law. It's why there's nothing but personal attacks on our elected leaders that haven't allowed them to just bully and rake them over the coals in public. People like Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and AOC.
If anyone's breaking the law in this situation, it's not members of Congress, it's the Department of Homeland Security. It's people like Tom Homan and Secretary Kristi Noem. You lay a finger on someone, on Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, on Representative or any of the representatives that were there, you lay a finger on them, we are going to have a problem.
They're probably already crying about the aggressive language coming from AOC after proudly talking about ignoring due process and court rulings all the way up to the Trump-leaning Supreme Court. This president deals in selling a brand to society that doesn't usually have much behind it except that sales job. Because they need people to believe that they have the right to defy the Constitution and arrest anyone that they want simply because they say so. So they'll try to make examples out of lesser-known officials or citizens that they don't think anyone will defend first before they eventually use those same tactics on anyone else that dares to oppose them. So we're not on the verge of fascism. We're in the middle of the fight against it.